And it doesn't stop with the personal trauma. I did a lot of trauma work on my own in my earlier years. And in the last years now, while I'm going through this process, I'm processing, or it comes on me. I can't do anything, or sometimes I try to defend myself, but I have no chance. Then it comes a month later, and it's just more and more difficult to process. Transgenerational or collective trauma. I'm from Germany, and in my mother's family, there's a lot of war trauma, and so and it's not only this. I'm going through years now of darkness and of trauma that's not my own trauma, and I have to process it again and again. I don't know if you know the work of Chris Page, LSD and the Mind of the Universe?
Oh, yeah.
He writes about the ocean of suffering. I just read the chapter yesterday again, and it's really like that. It's really, I have to go through this ocean of suffering of a trauma that's not my own. It's just inherited, and I have to do this work. And I think at the same time, there are people like me who obviously have to do it alone.
There's people like you who are doing it alone because there's no collective doing it together. Hey, welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. And, well, today we got something quite different. You know, a lot of us look at dementia and it's bye-bye to the person that we used to know. And that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's a little bit of difference. And there may be a lot of difference. Our speaker today, our guest today, Bettina Wichers, is going to introduce us to the possibility that there may be more dimensions to dementia than we're led to believe. The fundamental idea is that ego death is associated with not near-death experiences, but also psychedelics and some other experiences. And when those happen, people become something what we might call more mystical or spiritual. And our guest today will tell us more about how that might actually be, at least in a subset of people with dementia. So I introduce you to Bettina Wichers, and she has this remarkably unique title of a category that hardly exists out there, of which she is a prominent member, but not the only one, but a prominent one, of transpersonal gerontologist. Try that one out. Well, we're going to try that one out today. She experienced a radical transformation process in which she found answers to professional queries about her professional topic, which was dementia. Her research focuses on possible phenomenological parallels between dementia and spiritually transformative experiences, or some people call it spiritual awakening. Her professional experience as a clinical supervisor in the field of dementia, her own process following a spiritual transformative experience like this, and insights from interviews with relatives of people with dementia all feed in to this research. Now, this is going to be a remarkable discussion because it's new to you, as it is to me, and we will find something that maybe you hadn't thought about before. So welcome to Connecting with Coincidence, Bettina.
Thank you, Bernie.
Well, why don't you tell us about that experience you had in which everything changed?
Yeah, briefly, it was an experience of nothingness, and it was only this. So it was an experience of just in time and space, probably not a second. And this in this moment, that was not a moment, everything dissolved. And there was no self, no me, no word, nothing else any longer. Everything was gone for this moment. And there was a knowing that was not personal about that never anything existed. So it was really, in Buddhism, it's called ajata. It was this just for a moment, and then you come back and everything has changed. Because you live from that with this knowing about nothingness. And it's strange to come back into this life with this knowing. So this is briefly describe my experience of this moment. And the challenging thing came afterwards.
Well, what you describe, other people have described before,
Yeah.
and you know that. So there's something unique here. Somehow you relate that experience to dementia, your
Yeah.
experience to dementia.
Yeah.
So please wind us out in the spiral from that particular moment to dementia.
Yeah. Several threats. So the first thing was I came back in this existence in my life as it was before, and it wasn't any longer that. And I thought one of my first thoughts was I have to rethink dementia again. I have to think about dementia totally new. That I knew that there was something involved in that could explain dementia to me, especially this dissolution of this self and the confusion that comes afterwards about what does that mean and how can I live that. These was my main questions, and I'm still not done with this question. How can I live with that? So in this, the life is going on as before, and nothing is the same any longer. And then I went through these years, and I tried to continue with my old life, with my former life. Tried to continue with being a teacher at nursing schools and a clinical supervisor in nursing homes and so on. And it worked for a while, but there was something wrong because I didn't believe in dementia as a biomedical explainable disease any longer. This belief was gone.
Well, what made the belief go away? Because you didn't have dementia. You were working with people with dementia, but then you put together that moment of nothing, everything
Mm-hmm.
with dementia. So keep leading us along.
Yeah, it was a little bit. There was one thing that I always in my work before thought, why does it come to dementia? And there was always, of course, I studied it. I have a master's in gerontology, so I learned all these biomedical theories, and I couldn't believe them because there was something in the people I met that that made me thinking about what was going in their thinking, in their consciousness, that something in them had driven them into this state of consciousness that I
You mean
called it.
that we call dementia?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I thought before that there's something self-directed in that. It's not just a biomedical thing that happens to you and you can't do anything against it, but that there is something in these people. Because when you work with people with dementia in the later stages, and you are with them for a longer time, and you learn to be the witness of them, not of their consciousness, not just looking at their behavior, but really becoming aware of that what is going on in them. Then you get more and more, or you can get more and more the impression that something in them wants to forget.
Wait. Let's let's do that slow for this audience here that is me. Um, Something in them wants to forget. So this is repression on steroids. Okay, I think that's what I think. Okay, I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But there is. Hmm?
Uh, it's it's just it's just okay. We've got there, but it's pretty amazing to think that dementia comes from at least a drive to not remember. That the end result actually is purposeful on the part of the person with dementia.
Yeah.
Well, but
Well,
well, Bettina Wichers, tell us more.
yeah, it's difficult because a lot of people think that's victim blaming, and it's not about victim blaming. It's not that, but at the same time, it's really go into the, yeah, there's so many aspects. When I was sitting with some of these people with really late stage dementia for diagnosing them, I often sat with them only 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes when they were, sometimes I walked with them and sometimes I sat with them when they were sitting quietly, not in the agitated state, but when they're only sitting, were sitting quietly in the living room or something like that. And when you are aware of the subtle dimension of this life, and I didn't knew at that time that I'm so aware about that. But when you just sit with them, you can recognize something in them. And I made the comparison at that time that I said, if you see a Zen monk in deep contemplation and a person with late stage dementia, when they're sitting next to each other, it's nearly the same state of consciousness, but one of them is conscious and the other one is unconscious. But where they are, that's nearly the same.
One of them is aware of being where they are, and the other one isn't, but where they are is the same place.
Yeah, it's the emptiness.
It's the emptiness. And you could pick that up with your sensitivity
Yeah,
to,
that was, yeah,
and that's the kind of sensitivity that gets you in trouble too.
yeah,
You just pick up too much stuff from
yeah.
around you when you've got that. So you've got to be able to organize when you're going to be that sensitive and when you're not going to be that sensitive. That's a problem that we don't have to get into right now, but I
Mhm.
deeply recognize if you can do that with somebody who's dementia and you can know where they are and it's similar to where you were in that moment of nothingness, as well as to Zen monk deeply meditating, that kind of awareness on your part is amazingly expansive and very tricky to negotiate in regular life.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And it's a kind of danger in being with people with dementia with this openness. And I was not aware of that because I think I got too much transmission of unconscious emptiness from people with dementia. So when this happened, this experience, I know that there were several transmissions or something like that shortly before. And I think I experienced so much unconscious emptiness through the people with dementia I was accompanying as a supervisor. So and that was also a thought, or I said that often before, that for an integral life practice, I think, the approach from Ken Wilber, this integral life practice. And I also often recommended that being a volunteer in the care for people with dementia would be a good addition to that for a spiritual practice.
I think you're saying that.
Yeah,
I think you're saying go sit with somebody with dementia when they're quiet,
yeah,
and that will help you with your own spiritual practice.
yeah, yeah.
That's a message that not only might be good for the sitter, it's probably going to be good for the person with dementia too, even though they won't be able to tell you very well. And then the person who's the sitter becomes more attuned to that experience and can help other people get to it themselves also.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get into that a little bit more. That this tell us just more about. I don't know tell us more about all this.
Yeah, this is only the beginning, because then this experience of nothing has happened in me at the end of 2018, and I tried to continue with my old life, my former life, for a while, and then in March 2020, Corona showed up, and I lost all my jobs. I was worked as a freelancer in the nursing home, so I was not allowed to go there any longer due to the COVID measurements in Germany. And so I lost the rest of my normal life before. And then I went on a journey for years. And in this process, this, what I say, the dissolution of the self continued in me. In this moment where I had this experience, there was no self. There was a clear awareness of that there is no self in no one, but in this case here. And this process worked through me, in me, and yeah, over years. And in the hardest years, I diagnosed a lot of dementia symptoms in myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What dementia symptoms did you notice in yourself?
There was the regular symptoms that we all know in such situations: anxiety, fear, deep despair, depression, but also, I always forget how it is pronounced in English, aphasia or aphasia. Do you say aphasia or aphasia?
Aphasia,
Aphasia.
aphasia.
Yeah, I always forget that. There were days where I really recognized aphasia in me, when I was not only not able to find words any longer, but I was sensing so much in these years, and I understood so much more about this existence and about dementia, and that it was too much, so I didn't found thoughts any longer for that, what came in me, or what was going on in me. So I was really for some days not able to express myself any longer. I didn't find words. I didn't find thoughts any longer. So I remembered. I was remembering a woman with. Now I forgot it also. Primary progressive aphasia. I accompanied her for a while, and I did the diagnosis, because there was first an Alzheimer diagnosis, and that I was not sure, and I thought it's not Alzheimer's, and it was at the end primary progressive aphasia, and we had a connection. I think I was really, that I was so open for her, and we had a walk one day, and we walked together hand in hand, and she tried to express something, and then she stopped, and then I asked her something, and she again tried to express, and then my intuition said that to her, it's really hard when you're not able to express yourself any longer. And she stopped, looked at me, and cried and cried and cried and cried. And that was a moment when I knew there's no Alzheimer's. This woman is totally aware about what is going on. The only problem that she has is that she can't express herself any longer. And we had really a deep connection from that moment on. So, and I recognized what I sensed in her at that time. And this was the same in me in these days when I was totally alone. It was a time where I lived totally on my own. So it was quite, yeah, a lot of fear.
It was quite a lot. And I just for your and our audience to know that as I'm listening to you, as I have been, before you got to the aphasia, I was feeling more anxious than I usually do when I'm interviewing somebody. And then I was able to connect my anxiety with what was going on with you as you were telling me about it. And then when you came to, yes, um, it's difficult not to be able to express what you're thinking.
Mm.
The relief that she felt, you felt, and I did too, because it kind of like made it more calm down in the field of emotion that you and I are creating through this discussion.
Yeah.
That's all I can tell you is that I can feel the weight of so many emotions
Mm.
uh, in you.
Mm.
And I recognize how heavy that burden is for you. Uh, it's it's a lot
Mm.
that you're carrying around,
Mm.
and you have a message to try to deliver
Mm.
as you do that. But it's still a lot, and I hope you can find ways to moderate that the way that you help this woman uh, feel understood and accepted.
Mm.
I hope you keep finding that in your environment.
Difficult. Yeah. And better go on.
People cry on this program, so don't worry about it. But that's what you
No.
started to do. But
Yeah.
we shouldn't have silence. I mean, it's not good for the
Yeah.
audio part of this.
Yeah.
So, but we'll just keep going. So we
Yeah.
touched on it. You know, I understood some of what
Yeah.
you're telling me about. The audience might be able to have felt it, and I hope so. But now we continue the this adventure of yours.
Yeah.
So please tell us you've had some dementia-like experiences yourself, aphasia being one of them, but
Yeah.
anxiety and depression are part of non-demented people as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. But a huge part of there were really long periods where I really felt disoriented and confused about that what was going on, because it's so unreal. You live your normal life, it goes on, and you have thoughts like this is not existing, and um, where am I? Where is this I? Where is myself? It's gone. Yeah. And I was aware, and I read all the spiritual books, and I had friends from Buddhism, so I was quite aware about what was going on. So on the cognitive level, but that doesn't help you with the phenomenology, and that is really confusing. And this over, not over months, over years in myself. And this was the time where my theory really deepened that the dissolution of the self, I call that. And it's not about ego death. I really talk about the dissolution of this active self, this sense of this is me, that this could be probably the origin of the dementia process long ago, 10 years, 20 years before we come to this point where we call it the clinical state of dementia. And in dementia research, we are looking now 10, 20, 30 years before, but only with biomarkers, not with a phenomenology. So I'm calling really for awareness for what is going on in these people 10, 20, 30 years before, in everybody who's aging. What is if this dissolution of the self is a kind of default mode of aging? It's a part of the spiritual process of aging, that the self is dissolving, and that we are going from the personal identity of adulthood into a transpersonal identity of age, old age.
Uh, you're describing that as a almost developmental
Yeah,
stage
yeah,
that we are all going to go through. Uh, uh, as we age and as we age. Um, However, when we first started talking, you were talking about dementia as being something to forget, a
Yeah,
need to forget. So
yeah.
making it part of the aging process so you get prepared for what might be what near-death experiences tell us will happen, that some aspect of ourself, whatever that is that remains, can go on to some other state of being.
Mhm,
That's what NDE suggests.
mhm,
But you're making a more profound claim than that, which is enough of a claim already. You're making the claim that um, there is almost a, I'll call it a defense mechanism, a repression. There is a desire not to remember myself, a desire not to remember me. Um, and that's a key part of what your research comes up with.
mhm.
So would you tell us more about what that is?
So I think this dissolution of the self is really happening in our 50s. It's starting in our 50s or 60s, in more or less everybody. And people who have a quite healthy psychological state of being and a spiritual healthy state of being, who they are able to moderate that. They are not confused. They are just saying, hey, something is changing. It could be part of my aging process. Okay, that's interesting. So they can go on with that. And perhaps they go and look for spiritual answers, and they go in Buddhism, and we see this often in aging, that people are becoming more and more spiritual. And I think this is part of that. It's a healthy way to deal with this inner process that is happening. Because in the last moment of our life, the self has to surrender. It has to die. And then there are people, when this self starts to dissolve, there comes other parts come up, and these are all these ego parts. I call them the pre-personal parts, all these unresolved trauma parts, these early psychological patterns, the survival drive. This is still there even when the personal self is dissolving. Our pre-personal parts are there if we haven't worked with them before, if we haven't worked with our trauma, if we haven't done our psychological work. So that it's there. And I saw this in so many people with dementia, really, really deep trauma, or old stories of cheating the husband or wife that came suddenly up, and a lot of shame with that. So it's a lot. And then you are not able to moderate that any longer. And you have to repress, to suppress, to push it away. You have to push. And if you imagine this in your brain, there are thoughts you always have to push away. Push. No, I don't want to think. No, I don't want to think about that. Then the brain is reacting. The brain is starting to forget and is not able to transform in the transpersonal. Instead of that, you're going into the regression, into the pre-personal. And when you are with people in the late stages of dementia, you see adult people in a pre-personal state of being.
And what does that pre-personal state of being look like?
Childish. It's our childish patterns.
So
It's
that's why you hear the stories of people getting older and they're acting more like children.
they're not only acting. I've been with so many of them for such a long time. They have the phenomenology. They experience themselves as their 20, 15, 12, 8-year-old self. They are not only thinking about that, they're really, if you be with them for a while, you will see that they really have the identity, and they go back in this dementia process. People are going back in earlier and earlier and earlier versions of their own self. They are themselves, but there's
They
an old body.
they are their old selves.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing that now. Uh, I'm not exactly 25 anymore. And I recognize that I'm getting older. And
Mhm.
as I'm getting older, and I have a lot of stuff that I'm doing, I'm writing another book. So in writing this book, I guess I still have an identity. Uh, I'm writing a book, and I do a lot of things around. I go to dance, I do things, I have friends, I have a good time actually. But I'm getting more in touch with being 6 years old again. Um, and it's really fun to be aware of being six. It's not the same as what you're talking about, but I get into the experience of being 6 or 8 approximately.
Yeah.
And then I also have the experience of being a teenager and a lot of other places that I've been before. So I imagine it to be like a tree, like rings of a tree,
Yeah.
where the history is all in me
Yeah.
and where I can go to one of those rings every once in a while and be in it
Yeah.
and be aware that I am in it, which is the difference of what we're talking about. And what I've been doing a lot of lately is working on some past traumas
Mhm.
and trying to bring them up. And it's kind of strange, I thought, to be looking at these traumas at age 83 and sick and seeing them and resolving them, starting from when I was 16 months old,
Yeah.
but being able to do them all, which takes a lot of psychological capacity because I've been doing this work for a long time. So to expect someone who doesn't have the depth of psychological capacities that I've been able to develop by being a psychotherapist and by working on myself and by going through a lot of traumatic things, mostly grief, abandonment, have been central to them, and trauma and rage at some of these experiences, to recognize how deep and pervasive they are in me and to be able to like surface them and have some awareness of them enough to let them go enough so that don't interfere with what I'm doing right now has been a lot of psychological work for me. And I'm trying to imagine now how difficult it would be for someone and later in life to work on these traumatic experiences and resolve them, uh, and how if they start coming up again or still popping up as the cortex gets less able to deny and repress them, then they become so painful that it leads into what you're talking about, that they can't experience these things. It's too hard and they can't process them. So they lose their memory,
Yeah. They try to forget. They force themselves to forget.
forces them to forget. So they're not good at forgetting just those things. They begin to forget everything
Yeah. Yeah. I
right
think.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't stop with the personal trauma. I did a lot of trauma work on my own in my earlier years, and in the last years now, while I'm going through this process, I'm processing, or it comes on me. I can't do anything, or sometimes I try to defend myself, but I have no chance. Then it comes a month later, and it's just more and more difficult to process. Transgenerational or collective trauma. I'm from Germany, and my in my mother's family there's a lot of war trauma, and so and it's not only this. I'm going through years now of darkness and of trauma that's not my own trauma, and I have to process it again and then again and again. I don't know if you know the work of Chris Page, LSD and the Mind of the Universe?
Oh, yeah.
He writes about the ocean of suffering. I just read the chapter yesterday again, and it's really like that. It's really, I have to go through this ocean of suffering of a trauma that's not my own. It's just inherited, and I have to do this work. And I really think and I think this is also happening in a lot of other people. And if you don't have any understanding of that, how can you deal with that? It's so heavy and such a burden for me, who is really has a capacity of, no, at the moment I don't feel that I have the capacity any longer, but normally I have, and I have the knowledge and the spiritual awareness and all that. So it's, yeah, it's a big story, and I think dementia is a quite logic development from this perspective.
Ich verstehe, which means I understand. Meine Eltern sind aus Deutschland, which means my parents came from Germany, and they escaped the Nazis before they got to them.
Mm-hmm.
I have two cousins and an uncle that were murdered in one of the death camps.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born in 1942, in the midst of all that death camp, Nazi murdering. And so I have been imbued as the first son of the first son of the first son of the first son, going back many generations to a village near Wiesbaden, where my father's family had lived at least since the 1800s, and having to be displaced from what was their home all the way back, so that I can hear the echoes of my grandfathers, Ludwig, David, and Isaac, through who speak through me, who live through me, and especially Ludwig and my father, who had to leave where they were born and where they were raised. This is one person's example of the genetic or transpersonal or transgenerational trauma that is getting more and more awareness, and the ocean of sorrow, the ocean of trauma that Chris Beitman dipped himself into, is a beautiful way of saying it. And we can't do it, Bettina, on our own. If there is going to be a healing of that transgenerational trauma, it has to be by a large subsection of humanity doing it for themselves and for the rest of us.
Yes.
Well, that's what I think anyway. So that's what.
And I think at the same time, there are people like me who obviously have to do it alone.
There's people like you who are doing it alone because there's no collective doing it together. There is none. I'm writing a book about the future of humanity, and what I just said now is going to be part of that. But it can't, it's not happening now. You're doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And if there's a message we're trying to say here, it's the, we've repeated it, but I want to say it again, that dementia is the product of the terror of having to remember personal and generational traumas that are so overwhelming that the person's weakening ego, weakening sense of self, can't manage them. So it's much easier to shut the whole thing down and go home.
Yeah. Yeah. There are also other parts. I just don't want to put it only make the trauma responsible. It's also really strong personal patterns, strong egos. Even I've cases of spiritual ego that drove people in their late life into dementia. So it's not. So it's a mix.
Explain that. Explain that, please, a little bit more, Bettina.
I know of some people who were spiritual, highly recognized as very spiritual developed people, and they went several. I know now of several examples. They all went into dementia in their very late life. So, and in some, it seems so that there was some kind of spiritual ego they were so attached to that it also drove them into dementia.
This is really an important idea because I've gotten caught up in how look how spiritual I am, people. Um, I am I am the center of your experience. I can help you evolve into the person that you need to be. Look how
Mm.
wonderful I am doing that. Is that what you're talking about?
I wouldn't put it so high. It's just that that sounds so
I get dramatic. I get dramatic.
purposeful. Just only that they perhaps really had awakenings in their early life, and they worked through with all that all their life, and they struggled also, and then they had this spiritual identity and were well recognized. And of course, you get comfortable with that. Most people get comfortable when you have a highly spiritual name. Yeah, and then old age comes and you have to step back from your responsibilities, from your spiritual. You can't speak any longer, you are not the teacher any longer, and you're so connected to your spiritual ego still, so this identity as a spiritual perfect or whatever person. And if you can't let go of that, then it can also draw you back into dementia.
Well, I think of people like Deepak Chopra as very much fitting that. His identity is deeply involved with look how spiritual I am and look what I can teach you.
Mm,
And he's very well known and very well recognized and still needs to go out and have people recognize his ability to help them.
mm.
And I think, is he an example of what you're talking about?
I, I met, not I met, but I saw him. I was at the Science of Consciousness conference in Barcelona in July, so he was also there, and I saw him several times. And he doesn't look. I didn't have the intuition that he could be in a dementia process, so I don't know anything about him, and I wouldn't know. It's really more monks. I have contact now to scientists. I sent him my research and asked him if he can get in contact. He's doing meditation research, and now he wrote me back that he was had a chat with an abbot of a monastery in Thailand, and that this abbot confirmed my findings about this, that also the spiritual process can bring, or the awakening process can bring people into dementia or in dementia-like symptoms. And if you're not can't handle that, or you're not aware about that, it comes also with this awakening process, then yeah, then it can lead you into regression instead of transformation. So it's
I'm still not understanding this because I was under the impression that from what you said that you get recognized, and that is other people recognize
sorry.
your spiritual development. That's why I brought up Deepak because that's he's he's a spiritual rock and roll kind of guy. He gets out there,
Yeah.
but that's not what you're talking
I
about.
mixed two things. Sorry, I just was so enthusiastic because of this abbot from Thailand, because it's a confirmation of my research. Go back to the spiritual develop paper. So I don't want to talk about Deepak because I don't know how about his way. I just know about people that are all deceased now, and they were spiritual leaders, and they went in their last years into dementia.
And by spiritual leader, what do you mean?
Um, yeah, monks and nuns who were leading Buddhist traditions, and also something like that.
They had people who respected their
Yeah,
teaching
they were
as
teacher. They were
they weren't on their own.
yeah,
They had other people.
yeah. They were spiritual teacher. I'm a little bit I'm a little bit careful to talk about that
Of
because
course. Okay,
yeah,
of course, I understand that, but all I'm trying to make clear is that the spiritually elevated person who then becomes a transmitter
yeah,
of spiritual information
yeah,
to help other people
yeah,
begins to develop an identity as a spiritual teacher.
yeah,
And that identity, it becomes hard to give up.
yeah. Thanks for the translation. That was perfect.
Bitteschön.
Danke sehr.
And because it becomes hard to give, why do they have to give it up as they get older?
I think there are different reasons. From several persons, I don't know the whole story. I just know that there were spiritual leaders and they went into dementia later. So I have to just guess, and I'm trying to get in contact, and it's not easy because their former students try to protect them.
Yeah, try to protect them. Um, it's from what, so, okay, you're the researcher, you're careful. I'm not so careful. Uh, I kind of, I go like that.
Yeah.
So I'm still thinking that something starts missing for these spiritual leaders as they get older.
Yeah.
They begin to notice that their capacities may not have the impact that they'd like to have. Uh, and that should be something that is recognizable, understandable, and acceptable. However, if you're spiritually advanced, but if you're not that far away and you're invested, and that's the key idea, invested in the reflection of your wonderfulness in the minds of other people, and that reflection starts becoming a little distorted, and that's how you know yourself in part by how other people see you, then that becomes something difficult to accept.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'm not going to ask you to say any more than "yup" on that one, but that's what it started to look like to me.
Yeah, I stay silent at that point and perhaps later. So let's
Yeah,
leave it at
you
this point.
stayed silent. You didn't scream at me, so there might be something to what I was talking about.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think you're not wrong, and I think there's more, and I don't want to speak about that.
oh, I'm so interested in the more, but
Yeah.
you're not going to speak about it, and I'm not going to ask you to speak about it. So I think we've done very nicely with this subject because we've gotten to the brink of what I think is a very important thing, which you're not able to speak about. So let's speak about in our remaining 15 minutes or so. Let's talk about the synchronicities that you have experienced
Hmm.
that are not so spiritually wonderful
Hmm.
or psychologically wonderful. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a relationship with what we're just talking about to these synchronicities that aren't so great. I just would guess that, but there might be and there might not be. So tell us, because the important point you want to make is that synchronicities are not always wonderful.
Yeah. 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 When of course, I'm in several scenes or something spiritual, esoteric scenes, or went through them, and it's mostly that synchronicities is something great and always uh, shows a brighter future or something like that, the golden future or something, a great chance. And um, yeah, I had times in my life where there were a lot of synchronicities and some really beautiful, and then I was not able to follow these synchronicities. So I had to push them away. It was really a wave of synchronicities. I had to push them away. And really my life broke down afterwards. So it was really as if it's one thing that I saw, that I asked myself, if you're not able to use synchronicities for yourself, what is happening then? Is it bad luck? Is something bad happening because you were not able? This is one question. And the other thing is that I have coincidences and synchronicities like this, that I was a dementia researcher, and I had an experience that brought me into a dementia-like process. This is, of course, a synchronicity over a longer time period. But it was in no way nice until now. I hope perhaps it will show up one day, that there will be a nicer result afterwards. So I'm quite asking myself why we are only looking for this positive, this nice synchronicities, and are not aware about that synchronicities can show us also that things become difficult or dangerous or something like that.
You know, we have to pay attention to them, and as I wrote about it in my book, Meaningful Coincidences, to try to say they're not all so wonderful. And they can be good at the first, and then they can be awful later.
Yeah.
And they can be awful at the beginning and terrible later, and they can be good for one person and not for another person. So those are variations on the theme, and we need to be able to pay attention to sometimes they really lead you down dark alleys. But as we just mentioned that, I want to come back to the dementia because I was wondering as we were just talking about synchronicities, what was there anything? What do we do now that we have this knowledge about dementia that you are trying to bring to the world?
Oh, several things. One is I would like to go back in my former work and would teach nurses again about dementia, but now with a total different perspective. So bringing the awareness of this dissolution of the self into the care of people with dementia, that we think in a different way.
And what would be that different way? That would make
be,
a difference. That would make a difference.
That would make a difference, or that will make a difference about the spiritual awareness of the nurses, because when they change their perspective from this unexplainable processes in the brain, where nobody has an idea where it comes from and what we have to do, to a consciousness process, that there's something happening in these people long before, and that they're in a psychological or spiritual process, so we can accompany them much better.
How would they accompany them?
How
would they accompany them?
It would be a longer process to teach. If I would go back to the nursing home where I was a clinical supervisor now for 8 years, I would now start to show this different levels of consciousness, the body, the vital body, the mental, and the spiritual, and would show them that there is something happening in these people that we can't feel and grasp and understand with words, and becoming aware of that. And it would become, not with all, now I'm struggling, it's really difficult to explain. It would raise the awareness that these people are not stupid, not that they not only can't think any longer, that they're not only bodies, that there's still an awareness in them, a developmental process. But I don't get it now.
Okay, I think I can put some words on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You would have the nurses and even some of the relatives sometimes sit with that demented person when that demented person is quiet, in a kind of meditative place physically.
Yeah.
And in doing that, use the kind of intuition and sensitivity that a lot of people don't have, that you have, but could be developed,
Yeah.
so that when I am sitting with the demented person who is now quieted down, I can be empathic with their experience,
Yeah.
that there is still someone in there.
Yeah.
There's someone who is terrified
Yeah.
of having to experience the traumas of their lives,
Yeah.
but who is still there and is accessible if I am quiet while the demented person is quiet, and we can develop a nonverbal communication to which I can add words sometimes, the way you did with the woman saying it's kind of hard when you said it's kind of hard not to find the words, that you can be empathic in what I'll call a bioenergetic way, an energy field way. So your energy field and the energy field of the other person begin to resonate. And in that resonating, words may come out of you or sounds may come out of you, the listener, that could somehow be reassuring and helpful to the demented person.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm recognizing that getting a little bit tired. That was and while I was listening to you, I could really find another important point. What I would like to teach now is how dementia feels from the inside,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because this is what I had, this experience I had, and
yeah.
I think it's teachable, it's sensible. I can help people to get into that, to feel this on the subtle level. How does it feel if you are afraid, if you are confused? And I can explain this more, and I can help them with getting a sense of the phenomenology of dementia.
Yeah.
And this would
And it
change a lot. This would really change a lot.
and it might reduce a lot of the agitation that people use pills for, uh, by having that empathic connection and understanding of all the deep emotions in there.
And what also would change, and I'm doing it, I have some clients with dementia, really talking. We talk and try to figure out what is suppressed. It's kind of psychological process or psychotherapeutic process, but I don't put it like that. We don't have to always do psychotherapy. It's really just listening and doing research together. What is with the self in me? What is happening there, and what is coming up when I'm confused, and what is coming up when I'm ashamed, because I think people think that I'm more and more confused. So, and really doing this research, that I try to accompany people with dementia in doing the research about their own self, and by that doing a little bit maintenance in their own brain about what happens.
Yeah, so you're building on what they're able to, their ability is still to be able to talk
Yeah,
and process words.
yeah, yeah. And then really writing, speaking and writing, not just sitting in their own room and just doing
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
circular thinking all the time, but really I encourage them to take a journal and to write down and to do the research and to really say what is happening when I'm thinking about this and that, and doing the research. And I think this can be part of a kind of dementia prevention.
Prevention,
Yeah.
but they're already demented.
Yeah.
So you're talking about making it less, is slowing down the process.
Slowing down the process and at least being aware what is happening. Not suppressing, not pushing away, but being conscious about that, what is going on.
Boy, that is a world shaking of dementia idea, a set of ideas you have, Bettina.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really glad we're going to stop, but I'm really glad that I got a chance to talk with you. This is like a different worldview than most of us have of what dementia is. And I'm thinking of a friend of mine whose mother just became demented, and all the shame that she's had with her daughter being a drug addict and her husband rejecting her and all the other thing, and her son dying suicide. These are all things that she has to carry, and I could see a good reason for her to shut the whole thing down. It's just not, she can't manage it.
Mm.
And so well, I hope this interview helps a little bit in getting some help for you doing what you're doing. And it's right at the end here, but there's going to be a link to GoFundMe for Bettina Wichers. It's going to be in her bio. And if you've lasted this long for this interview, and you can hear me say it, please link to Bettina's GoFundMe and give her some cash. She's doing a really good thing. She's doing a really good thing, groundbreaking or mind breaking or consciousness breaking. It's really amazing. So thank you very, very much, Bettina, for being my guest on this show.
Thank you, Bernie, for this. It was really great to go so deep with you and having you as my mirror and sometimes finding the better words for that, what I wanted to say. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Okay.